I'm Meg Sheehan, a Plymouth native and volunteer with Save the Pine Barrens. I'm fighting to save the forests and waterways of southeastern Mass, our sole source drinking water aquifer, our environmental and cultural heritage, and the well-being of the people who live here now and future generations. Our sole source aquifer is the drinking water supply for 7 towns, 150,000 people, and more in the summer months. We're in a crisis. Thousands of acres of forested lands are being obliterated by excessive sand mining and deforestation for industrial scale solar projects. We don't need this type of extreme industrial development to have a thriving and sustainable economy. My earliest childhood memories are of the smells and scents of the coastal plain pine barrens forest, pitch pines and scrub oaks, and the clear crystal waters of our coastal plain ponds. Hay-scented ferns, low bush blueberry, Plymouth gentian, mayflowers, threadleaf sundew plants that are carnivorous. We delighted in exploring and learning the names of all the plants. Today, 220 of these plant and animal species are listed as endangered, threatened, or of special concern under our State Endangered Species Act. But the laws like this are not being enforced. We need to ensure enforcement of the laws that protect our water, our species, and our communities. The Pine Barrens forests here are a globally rare ecosystem, one of 3 remaining on Earth, a biodiversity hotspot. Indigenous Wampanoag people have lived here hunting, trapping, fishing, and gathering for millennia, long before the colonists arrived 400 years ago. 10,000 years of indigenous history, use, and occupation of the area are inextricably intertwined with the land, which has physical, cultural, and spiritual value. The aquifer and rare ecosystems lie on an outwash plain created by the glacier that laid down layers of what is today valuable sand and gravel. Today's topsoils took 30,000 years to form on this sandy plain. The glacial sand and gravel deposits include Carver sand, a silicate sand used for oil and gas fracking, concrete, and other industrial and commercial uses. It is a valuable, rare global commodity, the second most extracted commodity on Earth after water. In 2022, the United Nations Environment Program warned of the global shortage of silica sand and called on all states and governments to tightly control sand mining. In our region, forests and sand and gravel filter and protect our groundwater, keeping drinking water clean, performing this service for free. Excavating sand and gravel can change groundwater flow direction, changes stormwater runoff, recharge rates of the aquifer, and exposes the aquifer to more contamination. There are at least 85 industrial mining sites in our region, completed, existing, or proposed, and the cumulative impact on our groundwater, communities, and biodiversity has never been addressed. Mining 1 million cubic yards of sand and gravel takes over 40,000 truckloads and a 6-day-a-week operation over several years to clear-cut trees, remove stumps, excavate and sort and process the loam, sand, and gravel. This will generate about $9 million in revenues. Making the sand mining crisis worse, money is also flowing into our region from the state's misguided solar energy subsidy program. We have large areas of open space, including cranberry lands, being targeted by multinational corporations seeking to build large ground-mounted solar projects for private profit on forested lands, wetlands, and riverfronts. Carver and Wareham already have about 40 large ground-mounted solar projects with over 1,000 more acres in the pipeline. Up to 1,000 acres of forests in the region alone have been lost to ground-mounted solar. This has been happening since about 2015. For example, in Plymouth, A.D. Makepeace former executives clear-cut 25 acres of a legally protected area of critical environmental concern on Herring Pond for ground-mounted solar. Sometimes mining is done under the pretense of preparing sites for solar. The amount of sand extracted is often unaccounted for. The state's Smart Solar Program provides extra incentives for dual-use solar put on farmland, including cranberry bogs. Cranberry growers are mining uplands to site solar, clearing forests, and creating farmland to reap the subsidies, as well as putting solar projects directly in wetland peat bogs. Some of the dual-use solar projects on cranberry bogs use copper chromated arsenic-treated poles to mount the solar panels into wetland bogs and into the aquifer. A little bit about the cranberry industry in southeastern Mass and how we got here. There are about 14,000 acres of cranberry bogs in southeastern Massachusetts. Waterways and rivers and streams have been diverted, diked, and dammed to irrigate industrial cranberry bogs. In the 1970s, wetlands protection laws were passed to prevent the draining and filling of swamps and wetlands for cranberry bogs. Cranberry bog owners then took to putting bogs in upland forested land, deliberately targeting the highest hills and points of land on their property for cranberry bogs, and today for solar. Now we have thousands of acres of bogs, and the cranberry industry's market is crashing. Health-conscious consumers don't want the avalanche of sugar in cranberries. Did you know that a glass of cranberry juice has more sugar than Coke, Pepsi, or Red Bull? Did you know that sprinkling a few dried craisins on your salad is like sprinkling Mike and Ike's or Reese's Pieces? Since consumers are overwhelmingly rejecting sugar-loaded commodities, and there's a global shortage of silica sand, cranberry farmers are ramping up their mining operations to extract as much sand and gravel as fast as possible from every nook and cranny. In this way, they can, in actuality, mine the valuable deposits of sand and gravel as a separate business from the agricultural activity, while claiming the mining was solely part of bog operations. A.D. Makepeace, the world's largest cranberry grower and one of the state's largest landowners, hidden down dirt roads surrounded by cranberry bogs, and claiming that this is an agricultural operation. Mining is regulated on the local level here as a land use. In the 1980s and 90s, seeing the destruction of sand mining, towns started to regulate it. Now, mining must be directly incidental and necessary to the landowner's end use of the property. Landowners have to show that there's no other way to build their project on the site other than taking out all the sand and gravel. Local boards rarely, if ever, apply the law this way. Cranberry businesses and developers use ever more creative ruses to get around the local bylaws. They might claim they're building a new cranberry bog at the top of a very big hill, like A.D. Makepeace's 140-acre bog project in Plymouth, granted a permit in 2014 to take out 7 million cubic yards of sand and gravel, about $56 million worth. A lot more money than growing cranberries. Or it might be a solar project, like A.D. Makepeace's project on Tohonet Pond in Wareham, where the solar project will be sited on one of the largest hills around, and it's necessary, according to A.D. Makepeace, to take out 1 million cubic yards of sand and gravel. In Carver, Makepeace has submitted the same plans twice to the Carver Earth Removal Committee, claiming they're building a bog. But 10 years later, the bog hasn't been built. Other cranberry companies use the same ruse, mining year after year and not building the bog. Sometimes they'll claim they're building a reservoir and it's necessary to mine into the groundwater aquifer in order to obtain lucrative sand. AD Makepeace and others claim that removing the sand is an agricultural exemption sometimes, so they're exempt from local mining laws. They say they're using vast volumes of sand to build or maintain cranberry bogs. In Wareham, the public has had enough of this preposterous claim and is calling for an audit. Other developers claim it's necessary to strip mine and remove the profitable sand and gravel to build a subdivision road like this purported business park in Carver and this building site in Plymouth. When it comes to mining and wetlands, the industry has created another myth that it's automatically exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act as an agricultural use of the land. It is not, and local conservation commissions don't check. Once wetlands and earth removal permits are rubber stamped, local boards rarely, if ever, monitor and enforce permits. Permits expire and the mining continues. Some claim that large cranberry farmers have come to dominate these local boards and town politics. Local residents are being assaulted. Hundreds of trucks a day are leaving the sites, running past their homes and up and down our narrow country roads. They threaten our safety. They operate at all hours in a frantic effort to extract as much sand and gravel as fast as possible, heading to the highways to deliver our water filtration and our environmental heritage by the truckload. Operators are doing on-site crushing and sorting of sand and gravel, resulting in neighbors suffering years of noise, damage to their home foundations, vibrations and shaking of their homes while trees are being cut, stumps removed and ground on site, boulders being crushed on site. Neighbors can't open their windows because of the silica dust flying off the sites and covering their properties. The silica dust is a carcinogen. Local boards of health, committees, select boards, conservation commissions, planning boards, zoning boards, too often they ignore complaints. Our state agencies are turning a blind eye or worse. The State Department of Fish and Game is not doing its job to protect our biodiversity and rare species. The agency prints permits for companies like AD Makepeace to build solar projects and do strip mining in endangered species priority habitat. Permits are still issued and extended even when the required mitigation in the form of covering costs for pine barrens protection or putting land in conservation is not done. There is a long paper trail of excuse after excuse by AD Makepeace and its CEO on why the company hasn't complied with the many take permits that the state has given the company under the Endangered Species Act. Today, the permits are outdated and based on ancient information, but the state just renewed them. After decades of watching this destruction, people are coming together from all walks of life to help enforce our laws, to hold our regulators accountable, and to assert our political pressure at the local and state level. We're enforcing permits, showing up at hearings and meetings, and demanding protection for our water, biodiversity, and communities. Raise your voice, get involved, and join our network.